السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جميعا. This afternoon, I want to talk about choosing single motherhood. And choosing single motherhood is dangerous in Islam. I want to talk about this for some time pertaining to American culture and some of the social issues that plague American culture, and in particular dealing with the African American culture, or some would say the foundational American culture, or Black foundational American culture. Phenomenon that have been existing in America maybe for 30 to 40 years of single motherhood in the Black community by choice. And some of it is also mixed with um, men leaving off some of the fatherly responsibilities to maintaining their children. And this particular incidents, which are normal in American culture today, women choosing on their own to raise children or to have children without being married, this is something that in long term is going to affect children. And we can see it today, the effects of it in the Black culture in the inner city, where you have a lot of young males and females, in particular Black males and Black Latinos in inner city, where there's high crime rates and a lot of youth are involved in crime or criminal actions. And some research related to the individuals who are being incarcerated or who are committing these particular crimes, they find out that these individuals grow up in one family household, or I'm sorry, one parent household, where there is no father in the house. And I want to talk about some similarities between Black American culture or American culture choosing single motherhood and comparing to in Islam related to the yatim. The yatim in Islam means the orphan. In American culture, people believe that the orphan is a child who doesn't have any parents, mother or father. But in Islam, according to Islamic jurisprudence, the yatim, the orphan, is not the one who doesn't have both parents. Or orphans consider any child, male or female, that does not have their father. All right, their father passes away, died. In Islam, this is considered to be the orphan in Islam, because we understand in religion of Islam that the financial responsibility over children is from the father. It's from what? The father. So when the father dies, the child is considered to be orphan until that child reaches puberty. So in the Western culture and American culture, people consider an orphan to be somebody or a child who doesn't have any parents or both parents die. Well, in Islam, this is not the case. The child is not considered an orphan only if the father died, the yatim, only if the father dies. And in Islam, it's understood that the orphans, they are financially taken care of. They are taken care of, and Islam encourages individuals to support orphans, because we understand once the father is out the picture, the father is dead, the child is yatim, is considered to be an orphan, that child is going to have a life full of poverty. So in Islam encourages that people what financially take care of orphans until they reach puberty. And we are also instructed in Islam not just to financially take care of them, but even maintain their inheritance, meaning that until they reach puberty, that somebody If they had any inheritance, that they maintain it so the child could what have usage of it once they reach puberty. Also, we understand in Islam that the one who's going to support the orphan also support the orphan by maintenance, financial, and emotional and physical support, meaning educating the child, teaching the child etiquettes, teaching the child religion, being the role model for the child, and the maintenance, financial maintenance. It's not obliged for the Muslim to do this, but it's highly recommended to do this. And we have many narrations from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he discussed about maintaining and supporting financially orphans. All right, maintaining and supporting orphans is even hadith that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam speaks about the man who maintained two orphan girls. All right, Islam even speaks about the virtue of maintaining orphan girls. Right, the one who maintained her. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a narration narrated by Muslim and Tirmidhi, whoever take care of two girls, he and I will enter paradise like these two, and he gestured with his two fingers. Right? So we understand even the virtue of maintaining the orphan girls that are female. Right? So Islam encourages maintaining children, maintaining children, right? Because we know that the child, once the child is orphaned, meaning that the father dies, that child has nobody to financially support it. As Allah is saying in Quran, um, Ku anfusakum wa ahlukum nara. Save yourself and your family from the fire, right? Allah also said, "Rijalun qawwalun ala nisa," right? That the men are stronger, right? Stronger physical and also meaning financially over what? Their women, meaning that men maintain women, right? Which also means maintaining the children. And then the Messenger of Allah says, "Kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ul ala riyatukum." All of you are shepherds. All of you are responsible over your flock. Ar-rajul mas'ul ala ahlihi. All right, that the man, kama qala Rasulullah, that the man he was responsible over his what households. Even Islam, when it comes to the definition, mas'ul ala riyatukum, he is responsible over everything, everyone who's under his care. This means not just his own children, but whoever is in his household, children, female, that he is what? Responsible over them. Right? He is what? Responsible over them. Whoever is in his care, he is responsible for them. Right? So we understand that in Islam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave that power and that position to the man. And it makes sense because the woman, what? It's not like the man physically. And in many cases, financially. All right. So the man has what? The maintenance. So we understand once the man dies, he is out of the picture. That child loses his what? Financial support from the father. Now, here in the West, where women are choosing to raise or to have children and to raise them without a husband or not being married or whatever they want to call it these days and ages, that child loses some form of finances and he lose another form of support. He lose the financial support of having two parents in the house. He lose the support of having a role model, especially for male children. He loses that fatherly figure or role model that he doesn't have in his house. So when the women decide to have children and not to be married or not to stay with the father, and they do it by choice, they are also they are also um, putting their children in the line of fire or down the line of not having success in their adult life. In their adult life. So when people say that they want to have children, or women say they want to have children and not be married and not with a father, or not with a male who's going to be responsible over the child, whether it's for moral support or financial support, that this is going to be very harmful for the child long term in his development, in his physical development, because due to poverty, and his moral and spiritual development. And there's many studies that have been done in the West, especially in US, and research that shows that when you don't have two parents in the household, the child's going to have a life full of poverty. There's many studies on this. And especially when it comes to in America, which is a capitalist system, everything's related to capitalism and making money and this and that. They really don't care about the spiritual aspect of the child having a father. They don't want to look at the spiritual or the religious aspect of that, but they're only looking at the financial aspect of it when they are most like the children are most likely to grow up in a house with one parent, meaning the mother, without the father, that they're going to have a lot of hardship. And they have done studies that they found that many people who are incarcerated in prison, many males who are in prison, that many of them come from a single female household. They come from what? Single female household. And this is one of the dilemmas in the Western society, and this is one of the dilemmas in the foundational Black American society, that we have a lot of women who choose to be single mothers. And even in the religion of Islam, we understand once the father is out the picture, dead, for example, the child automatically becomes a orphan in Islam. Even if the mother is alive, that child is an orphan, because in Islam, we understand that the man has a financial responsibility over that child that will help nourish and nurture that child. That's why in fiqh, we have a section in fiqh just only discuss about nafaqat. Nafaqat means the man financially take caring his children. And what happened when that is neglected, that the child grows up in poverty and start picking up bad behaviors or are involved into unmoral acts, which means bad behavior like criminal actions. For the male children, stealing, robbing. For female children, they end up into what? Prostitution, because she's not financially getting support from the father. So most likely woman falls into prostitution, selling herself. And even if we look in today's time in America, that there's many specials, research specials, YouTube videos and channel dedicated to prostitutions and young females in prostitution by choice. You'll find that they have no financial support from their father. There's no father financial support. They're coming from single female households, and they are in poverty. And this is why a lot of them choose that lifestyle. And then we look into the criminal system in America related to African Americans and Latinos. We find with the African Americans that the many youth that are in prison, they come from single females households. So who in their right mind want to choose to be a single mother by choice? This is something very delusional, and it's something very harmful and dangerous for children. This type of thinking and behavior. It's very dangerous. And we live in a society where the academic education is at the highest point that it could be. But the Americans are not benefiting from any of these academics. If we look into child psychology and human development, all these things are talked about in child psychology and human development. All the research is out there, all the numbers and status and reality about these situations of those who grew up in single female household, what type of dilemmas they have in their whole life, how from childhood it misdirect them as adults. But we still talking about females talking about they wanted to choose to be single mothers. And this is something that is praised. But in the academic world, like in psychology and sociology, we understand that, hey man, there's big dilemmas for children who grow up in single parents household. But then on another spectrum, they are praising single females who decide to have children. But in the social science and psychology, they are looking at it. No, man, this is a dilemma in our society. This is why we have the crime rate, the reason why it is, with other factors including into that, like systemic racism. So, how are you going to champion to want to be a single mother? What are the things that these children are going to face? And unfortunately, another part of the problem of this is the legal system, family court system supports this, support these behaviors. You always have to remind yourself who legalized these things legally. The family court system, the legal system legalized these things for women liberation and the feminist movement, but we never talk about the results of these actions. How does it affect children? There's a study out there that talks about if the person stay with the first person they have a sexual relationship with, that they're more likely to have success, in particular their children, compared to people who have multiple different sex partners. And like I said, we live in the capitalist society, so they only care about the finances. They only look at, in some of the research, financially how that person will benefit or those children will benefit. But we don't look at none of the spiritual aspects. The child who grows up with no father in the house, especially for male children, they have no male role model. And then we have women talking about, well, they don't need a man. So that male child has no what? He has no role model, no support, moral support, how to be a man. And a woman can't teach a child how to be a man. That's why in Islam, when we talk about the yatim, the orphan in Islam, if the father died, whether the child is a male or a female, is considered to be an orphan. And Islam what encourages what? If the child is what? Orphan, that the people what? Step up, people in the community and society step up and take the place of the father, surrogated father. By what? Financially supporting that child, and what? Spiritually and financially. That the child has what? A role model, whether it's male or female, that it gets some affection, that it gets attention. So the child, what, could be nurtured. Sorry, the child could be nurtured. And if the child is not nurtured with these things and the male role model as a father, it would affect the behavior of the child. And if we can even look into the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was a yatim. His father died when he was very young. First, his father passed away. Then his mother, Amina, she passed away. And then we can look into the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam once he died. And this is before Islam or revelations came to the Prophet Muhammad. But even in the Arab traditional societies back then, that once the child parents died, one of the male figures take care of the child. So when the Prophet ﷺ father died, the tarbiyah, or the educational financial support for him, came from his grandfather Abdul Muttalib, who was Qurayshi. And then when his grandfather died, the responsibility fell on his uncle, the Prophet's uncle, Abu Talib. So even we see, even before Islam came, before the Prophet Muhammad got revelations in the old Arab culture, that they understood that the child, what, when the father is absent, that child needs a male role model. So the Prophet ﷺ was what? Nurtured by his what? Male members of his family. So how we have in today's society, that in America, people are championing black, in particular black women and white women and Latino women, the Western women. She is talking about she wants to be a single mother, and this is being championed in American society, in our culture. When we go to it right now, if we go to a third world country where there's poverty, right? We see these things in the news. We see these things on ads for sponsorship. When we look into in third world countries that are impoverished, you ever notice when they show poor people or children that are impoverished, most likely they're going to show the child without the father. They're going to show the child with the mother without the father. The father's going to be dead. So once the father dies and there's no one else to help the child, we see that the family falls into poverty. And if they're already poor with the father, if they're already poor, and when that father dies, the levels of poverty goes down and down. It goes down, meaning it's a greater harm for that child and for that family. We can see that in these societies in a third world country. And they're looking for financial support. When you go to war-torn countries where the people are fighting in war, and we see one of the realities of war, the effects of war on children. What, first from the bombing and the explosion and the loss to life and death, then you also see from what? The children losing their father. Even in American society, when it comes to child psychology or children's psychology, when you start looking at when children start misbehaving in American society, is the society where you find that when America entered into World War I and World War II. Why? All the men were in war. All the men were fighting overseas in war. So when America entered into World War I and World War II, in particular World War II, this is when you start seeing all the issues of children. Why? Because when the men went to war, the mothers had to go to work. When men went to war in America, in World War I, World War II, the woman had to do what? The woman stepped up and would enter into those industries that the men were into. Because in America, in World War II, this is when America government got rich from the Industrial Revolution, making things for the war. So the women took up the jobs of the men in those factories. And when those women took up those jobs, because the men were in war and fighting, children did not have what? The mothers in the house to maintain the child, to nurture the child. And they didn't have the financial support of the father because the father was in war. So the woman had to go to work. How that affect children? And now it's 2022 and 2023. In the black community, we champion single motherhood. Dysfunction only makes more dysfunction. Dysfunction only produce more dysfunction. The child by nature needs to be nurtured by both parents. It's the yin and the yang for the child. But we have this dysfunctional feminist society that we live in. No, they want to go against nature. They want to go against the natural fitra and say, I want to be a mother or bear children without being married, and I don't need no man to raise this child. Then they wonder why we have this chaos society of many of the youth who grow up and they grew up in a single female household and they involve in crime, especially for the males. And for the females, they're out there because they're looking for that nurtured from their father. They're looking at estranged men and things like this. Come on. We're in 2023. In American society, when it comes to academic knowledge, you claim you reached the highest peak or at your peak of knowledge. But when we look how people are living in our society, we see something totally different. That knowledge that you claim you learn in psychology and child psychology and human development and the Darwin's theory and all these things of science I claim, that's also without spirituality. But when you look how you're living, you're not living according to the things that you claim in these findings that you are finding. And then the government on the side of the government who's pushing these ideas and supporting it financially. Then the women who choose to be the single mother, right? The single mother, the taxpayers got to come out their pockets to maintain her family. What a backward society. And then we don't think about how these decisions, what it's going to do for children, what type of adults they're going to be. And we already know what type of adults they're going to be. They're going to be the adults who are dysfunctional. And when adults are dysfunctional due to not having the correct childhood and those things geared in place that coming from both parents, financially, spiritually, that nurture, that nature needs, then the children grow up corrupt, dysfunctional adults with many type of issues, especially psychological issues and financial issues. But we're going to praise single motherhood. And we're supposed to be an advanced society in the Western world. That's why during the pandemic, when school were closed and people had to homeschool their children or remote learning, that many of the women who were forced to stay home with their children to educate them, many of them didn't even know how to help their children. Many of them didn't know how to help their children. And they wonder why, because of remote learning, while children are behind, because women don't know how to educate their children anymore. They're out there in the world, and then they want to choose to be single mothers on top of that. And then you have those couples who are married, who have children, who was doing remote learning. They also was suffering from the remote learning because the parents are outside the house, never was taught how to educate their children and leave it to the government to educate them. So they were struggling, a lot of them. Now, then the single mother was struggling more because she didn't have that extra help from the male figure. You better hope no natural disasters come to America, because if the natural disaster or some chaos or some political chaos comes, you're gonna see a lot of chaos in the street. Think about it. Them single moms, y'all ain't gonna survive. If America was to break out into civil war today, meaning that you're not gonna have no government there to protect your single mamas. You're gonna have a lot of problems. Even during the pandemic, we seen this here in New York. During the pandemic, all those women who had court orders and stuff like that, protection orders against men and stuff like this, police wasn't even there to come to uphold these court orders, protection orders for domestic violence and stuff. Now imagine if the whole country is in chaos or the whole state is in chaos and war and fighting. You single women with these kids, you're gonna be the first victims. You're gonna be the first one to perish because you have no man to help you and protect you. You're gonna be the first people to perish. First people to perish. And that's why in the old days, men went to war to protect their women. So imagine now the whole state is in chaos. We've seen this during the pandemic, and the pandemic was only disease related. It was only disease related. It wasn't civil war or civil grief, people fighting in the streets with weapons and stuff. It was just disease. If a disease that you can't see was able to put the single mom with the kids into a lot of chaos, imagine if a political, come on, the next election for a president election, it's gonna be some fighting. It might be some fighting in America. Imagine the country break into chaos, even in your states where you at. Who's gonna protect you? The first people going to perish are gonna be the single moms who choose to be single mom, got no man, don't know no survival. You're gonna be the first victims because you have no man to protect you. That is nature. That is nature. And then the children that you have, there are male children, they don't know how to be men, so they don't know how to protect you because they're gonna be acting like they mom. They'll be acting like the women that have been training them. And women been what? Women are what? Emotional. So they're gonna be what? Scared and emotional, just like the mother. And don't know how to fight or survive. Just emotional like the mom. Waiting and looking for the police or the government to come and help them instead of helping themselves because they didn't have a man to teach them how to do it. One day in America, all these bad decisions are going to come back and it's going to haunt our communities and our peoples, in particular for the Black Americans. It's going to hurt us more because when anything comes, famine, war, disease, we are the first to be what? The victims of these things. Just because what? First, we are in poverty. We don't own wealth in America, Black folks. So we be the first people to feel it. And just like the single mom syndrome, we are the first people to feel it right now in America. And you're going anywhere in our communities, anywhere, we are the first people to feel it. You go into the impoverished neighborhoods due to Jim Crows and systemic racism and red line and all of this. Today, we are the first people to feel these things. We go into our communities. Who are the most in jail? Are black males are the most in jail. And you look at them. How many of them come out of a single female household? Majority of them come out of a single female household. When we go into the college and the universities, you're not going to find the males who grew up in a single female household or the majority and the majority in the colleges. You might see the Black single females are the majority of Blacks in college, and that's due to the system designed that way because the Black male is the threat. So they'll push that single female stuff. But when everything hits the fan in America, when everything gets tight, you are the first people to be the victims of it. We are the first people to be the victims of it. And then you say, well, the men don't know how to do anything. The Black men don't know how to do nothing. They don't know how to step up. They sure don't know how to step up because they be raised by single women who can't teach them how to be men. So that's why the men today are not stepping up, because they was raised by you single females. And y'all champion these things, but in reality, you don't see the results of it. I could understand why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Whoever allows the woman to run the affairs," and here the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was heard that the queen, a woman, was made the queen, the leader of a nation. He said, "Whoever allowed the woman to be the leader of the nation, that nation is going to fall. Is going to cause a lot of suffering and fall." And we see that even in the black community, when the mothers are taking the positions of the men and they are failing their children, and then they turn around and today want to criticize black men, but the black men were not raised by black men. They were raised by single moms in welfare. Single moms. So all the black men y'all complaining about today, majority you the one who made them, you single moms. So you did it, so you failed on that end. And you also failed your daughters, but that's another topic for another day. You failed the daughters. Because some black successful men today, some don't even want to marry black women. Because they're raised by these single females. And the single female attitude, which is not about working together with men. If you like this video and you like to see more like it, please click like and share. We have a GoFund page going together at Black American Muslim Opinions. You can see the description of the GoFund in our page. And if you like to donate anything, please feel free to donate on our GoFund. And you can see the description of the GoFund, what it's about.
My name is Abu Bara. I am the founder of Black American Muslim Opinions. We are just getting started. Our mission is to openly discuss and examine social issues faced by Black Americans in their communities and formulate solutions that can be implemented in these communities from an Islamic perspective. We need your support to keep the organization going. Your donations will help us do the work necessary to help Black people overcome their social and economic challenges. Visit our website and learn more about what we do.